Thank you. Good morning, Wendy.
Hi, Ken. Good afternoon.
Thank you very much. And thank you for your sensitivity to my time zone. So the Expedia Group spans over 14 of the world's largest travel brands internationally. Who doesn't know who doesn't know Expedia? Um, Today we welcome Wendy Olson Killion, who is Global Senior Vice President and GM of Expedia Group Media Solutions at Expedia. We welcome you into the conversation. Thanks so much for joining.
Thank you for having me. You can call me Wendy, okay, because I'm not great, but I'm okay, just to lessen everyone's expectations. And it's just easier or walk, because we all need more acronyms in our lives, right?
Yes, there's not enough. I think you're on this panel because you're more than okay, but we'll press on. So you've had a very interesting career trajectory, both prior to joining Expedia and in your 11 years working at the company. Can you talk a little bit about the path that led you to this global expansive role?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the compliment. I like to tell a little bit of a story in that, I've been around the United States in different types of marketing roles, all online. I like to say at the beginning, the turn of the century, this thing called the internet, my career was there and has been there the whole time, first in automotive and then in travel. And as I was, a recruiter called it the salmon effect. So when you live in the Northwest, when you grow up in the Northwest, you eventually go back and spawn. You come back to the Northwest and you have kids. And so that's a great analogy. And then the fish die. So let's end that analogy. So that was our path. Having lived all over the US, came back, wanted to be in the Northwest, really loved automotive, but saw travel as, an option in Seattle that I hadn't had in some of the previous locations. And so took the jump there. And my background up until, really that point had all been in online product management. And I wanted to do that again. So we kept doing that in travel and really had an amazing journey as I got to manage all of our different products that we had on the advertising side, because we are the advertising business, if you will, that connects
Yeah.
people within Expedia to our wonderful audience. What I found out is it's a matching problem, right? This is what product always been. It's this macro matching problem. You take the consumers, you take the advertisers, you put them together in the right way at the right time with the right message. Well, what I found out is when I was on the road, because I started my career at JD Power and I love data. I'm a big data nerd and I like to present it. So I would go out and I would present some of our great research. I started talking to our partners and I could do the matching problem at a micro level in a partner facing role and get to work with an amazing team of trusted advisors to the industry. So I moved over to more of a client facing sales oriented role. And then about 6 months ago, I got the opportunity to bring it all together and look after the whole business. So that's my journey. It's been amazing. It is my dream job for sure.
Well, that's amazing and very prescient by you that you're able to figure that out. But as that love for data and that kind of that matching concept you talked about, really applies to a number of industries. But what do you love about the travel business in particular?
I love the impact, right? You can take the Mark Twain quote about, just really breaking down biases. Um, Travel's the only thing you purchase that makes you richer is the other quote that I always love. And so one, I love the consumer element of travel. I love to travel. Just as we heard in the previous speaker as well, like I love to travel. I think about the impact we can have on communities. I think of the Gulf Coast of Mississippi, for example, after the oil spill and the things that we were
Oh,
able to do
interesting.
to come together and bring more people into that region and help the community itself, but then also help travelers to understand a new part of the world. So generally, it's just such a world-altering industry.
Interesting, an interesting example. And you've spent 11 years at Expedia, which is, I would say, atypical these days. What's the secret of maintaining that career trajectory, taking on new roles and kind of moving up into the right at one company?
It's a good question. I will say, when you look at the tenure, at Expedia, people stay there a long time because we have an amazing culture, and we, again, like I said, we're in an amazing industry. So, on our team, we have employee number 96, for example. So my 11
Wow.
years is puny to many, but we have had a lot of new talent join, which is fantastic as well. And it's that confluence of knowing where we've been and then the new views, which is what makes us so strong as a company. What I will say is networking is so critically important. Getting to know people, understanding their goals and what they need and how you can work together to achieve those has probably been the singular most important thing in growing my career, and keeping top of mind, and also being very clear on what job I wanted. My predecessor took this job, and I think in maybe our second meeting, I said, I want your job. How do I get your job? Right? When you're done with it, not right now. But it was then all of that planning of saying, okay, well, I need areas here, I need here. And development of people is really important to us at Expedia, and making sure that we get people all of those building blocks. So when the opportunity comes available, they're ready for it.
Oh, that's very refreshing. The career pathing aspect is always critical to, and to that culture, I believe, that you discussed earlier. And you, um, what did you learn in the auto space that you were able to leverage in your roles at Expedia?
Automotive and travel, at first you could see some of the similarities, but as I got into it more, there's so many similarities. They're highly considered, highly researched purchases. For most people, they don't happen very often. They're expensive, so you spend a ton of time mostly researching it. Listings is research, right? You have, what can I afford? Can I afford a Cadillac or a Subaru? Can I, afford Eastern Washington State or Cancun, or what are these different factors that go in? And it's fun to watch how travelers use the sites. So in a lot of ways, those were very, very similar. I would say some of the biggest differences is around the types of advertising. Conquest versus convincing and things like that were a bit different between the two industries.
Sure.
But generally speaking, it's just the way that people research, buy, and eventually use the product. I'd say one of the biggest differences that I didn't expect. I thought, well, a car is so much more expensive than a trip for most people, right? As
Right.
we look at this, and I thought people would be more serious about the car. But the big factor is there's lemon laws. You can take the car back if it's not good. You can't take those vacation days back. You can't replace that feeling of walking into the wrong property that you should not have booked. Like, right? So there's that personal aspect of travel that actually makes it even more serious as people are shopping.
That's interesting. That's true. And as a father, if the vacation is not planned well, we know who gets the blame. Now, we talked about, your really expansive role at Expedia, overseeing product engineering, strategy, operations, and partner-facing teams. How do you balance your time across those various teams and countless initiatives?
You hire very well. I mean, that's
Is
really
that
the
always the
ticket is
secret?
you hire the right people leading, and you hire the right people in the roles. You empower them, you trust them, and you get out of their way, and then you take care of them. That's how you balance it. You make
Nice.
better leaders.
Now, I know you're not in the city these days. You're back on the farm where you grew up. But you mentioned on LinkedIn that you have a big cherry harvest every year. Last year, there would be some big aha moments you mentioned. What did you learn? And are these the big rainier cherries that I've heard so much about and have never tried?
We can go into a whole variety of cherries, because it's one thing is you can probably name 10 varieties of apples, and you can probably name sweet red cherries and Rainier cherries. Well, in the sweet red cherries, there's 10 different varieties. So we focus more on the sweet reds. Skinas are the big ones for us, but it was an amazing experience in getting back to the roots. We brought a lot of technology. And so a lot of my teams, we always say, how do we eliminate our roles? In this instance, I am going to be in every harvest from here until all out. I think I have my vacation planned in July every year from here on out to do this, because the technology piece, I've been kind of running that harvest management. The big ahas, when we implemented that technology, there were vendors we didn't even look at because of their pricing and their models, right? And they might have a more superior product, but because they couldn't explain the product and they led with the pricing and everything, weren't even considered. So I thought that was an interesting element. Um, be great to the people that are making the work happen, right? Because we could have an amazing cherry crop, but without people to pick it, you don't have anything, right? And so just really focusing on that. Go pick. It hurts. It's hard, right? Remember what people are doing to make your business work and appreciate them even more for that piece. Failure is not an option. It wasn't NASA, but when a linchpin comes off of a tractor and it's got to be going and you have no time to put it to the shop, a nice piece of wood will work. Like, just you make it whatever happens. And then I'd say finally, teamwork. What I observed is everyone was so singularly focused on the result that there was no me, or what does this mean for me, or how do I, everyone just did it, right? Whatever job was there, they did it to get it done because they were singularly focused on the result of the harvest.
That's interesting, and I have a number of follow-up questions, but I don't believe the brand innovator people nor the audience will be very happy with me if I dive more deeply into agriculture. So let's switch back to Expedia. You have a ton of data at your fingertips, or that you can mine and share with your partners. What data points are most surprising to you, or were most surprising to you during the pandemic?
Yeah, so many. We adapted a lot of our reports because as behaviors changed and how quickly we were able to see in real time as things were happening, right? Initially, everyone was coming to our sites to change and cancel their trips, right? And then what are the knock-on effects of that has been over the last, 14 months has been fascinating. And, now that we have credits, everybody's credits, they may be expiring, they're not expiring, but how does that work? We have some other different knock-on effects. What I would say is, we just recently, earlier this week, released a travel recovery and trend report that you can get on our website, advertising.expedia.com. And that's where we're kind of talking about some of the future, but we're also bringing in a lot of the data that we already have had. Vaccines, right? 1 in 3 Americans have already planned to take a vacation to celebrate being vaccinated. I already took mine, right? And it was amazing. 60% of domestic searches right now are 0 to 21 days out, right? And people are doing that. International travel, we are seeing international travel, coming back, but 30% of those searches are 91 days plus, right? And so seeing how the trends and the seasonality has changed and all of those things, we're seeing longer vacations. Verbo travelers are 75% more likely to book at least a 7-night stay. So we see people making up for that lost time. Domestic, 62% of global travelers, they're saying that they're going to stay close, right? And we're also seeing that road trip being a big part of it, right? So looking at all of these different data and sharing that out at a very personalized level, whether it be for a property or an airline or a destination, and sharing that out, but just seeing how quickly the seasonality is changing. And is there seasonality? We can't apply the old data to the current situation.
Yes, it's particularly in the booking windows, the change has been really interesting to view from our perspective. For our virtual audience, what advice would you have about how they can get the most out of their data for marketing purposes?
I think many of us are in a very fortunate position to have first party data, right? And if you have first party data, definitely use that as much as possible to understand what your audience is doing and how their behavior is changing. If you don't, or you want to supplement that, my biggest thing is work with partners who have first party data, work with partners who have real people in their systems that can augment or share a different view. One example I use a lot with destinations, when you look at our platform and our audience, you may have a destination who you think who you're competing against, right? You've had this competitive set all of these different times. Go check with your partners who have data. We see actually various, very different competitive sets, and those competitive sets are changing, dramatically during the pandemic, right? Where you maybe have very set competitors historically. Now you may be competing with, Yakima, Washington, which I hope you are because we have wonderful wine and beer here.
That's the word on the street, for sure. So, and what advice do you have for marketers who to use that data to best understand the impact of their own marketing programs?
Yeah, and I think it ties really closely to something you and I were talking about when we spoke earlier around conversion, right? Understanding your goal. What is your goal in that marketing, right? If it's conversion, work with people who have the conversions. And that's some of the biggest changes that we've seen is, especially with some of the destinations who have wanted to have much more type of influence in distributing travelers in their country or distributing travelers within their state or looking at some of that. They want to be closer and closer to the transaction because the number of transactions were a lot smaller in the last year for those who are traveling. So understanding the goals, understanding what you're doing, and then working with partners who can show you those results. Like for us, we can show organic booking rates and marketing assisted booking rates. We can do that incrementality testing on our platform. And I think that those types of partnerships are really important, and lean into your partnerships is a key element that we've seen.
Gotcha. And, here, not to plug Neustar, but one of our core focuses, is helping partners understand the pathways to conversion.
Yeah.
But in data, as you are well aware, the negative it can be as important as the positive. How much time do you spend, or how important is a non-converting pathways to shape your travel marketing?
Well, travel is very emotional, right? Travel is a decision now. People are making it more quickly now as we see those booking windows continue to be compressed, but it's very emotional, and you have to get that element of, all right, I want to travel, right? And that's one of the things we do is it's our job to get people off the couch, right? And get people back into, being comfortable in their communities, and then being comfortable in traveling and being comfortable in bringing that and making that window bigger and bigger. And so it's absolutely critical that we think about those things, right? And that we think about the non-converting pathways. Content is queen again, right? Like as you think about when it's, fallen out of favor, come back into favor, all these different things. We have had a great year and opportunity to inspire people. And now they're going to convert, right? Now that things are opening up, like it's been an interesting study in it this last year because it's been more important than ever.
Yeah, and to that end, last year you launched the What's Next campaign with kind of immersive images and images around images around the world. Can you give us a look behind the curtain there? What was the impetus for the campaign, and are there any learnings from the campaign that you can share with us?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was paired just a few weeks after a campaign that we did that was a hashtag campaign across the platforms that was travel through memories. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to get people looking back, having those emotions and thinking about all those times and great things and putting those pictures out there. And there were a lot of these types of initiatives that were happening at the time. And we got a lot of interaction, right? That was our goal. No brand play, just like remember how you felt to travel. And then we turned that closely with, where next, what's next, to get people to start thinking about what that next trip was. But we wanted to ground them in the piece there. And the real reason we did it is to help the communities and help our partners. So we knew our partners didn't have any, had very limited marketing dollars at that time. It wasn't a super effective time for them to be marketing and tying it back, but we wanted to keep their communities top of mind for our customers and for travelers. And so that was the biggest impetus for doing this. And we all wanted to dream. We all wanted to dream about what that next trip was. And so the way that the platform worked is you could go in and you could type a location and you could get some just really immersive images. And it was really as simple as that. But there was also a surprise me type button, right? You tell me. And the level of interaction with that surprise me button, people were staying on the sites just looking at an image of a location for very extended periods of time. And the amount of people, the time they spent was surprising to me. The number of searches they did, and then just how many people were engaging with that surprised me, was fantastic.
Nice, nice. That's great. And you've also reached, you've made this decision to support the destination marketing organizations, or DMOs, as we call them in the travel industries, with a $25 million initiative to support them. What has been the impact?
Yeah, this was actually part of a larger Expedia Group organizational effort. So we were over, I believe, $300 million that we put back into the industry to help our partners. And one of the things that key is they are our partners. We want to be there for them in good times and bad, just as they're there for us in good times and bad. And so that was critically important as we thought about that. We had the opportunity financially to give back, and that's what we wanted to do. The way that tourism boards and destination marketing organizations, they are so critically important to this industry. And you don't sell a destination, but you can't sell travel without a destination, right? So you can't go onto a listing and say, I'm going to buy Reno. But what you do know is, what do I have? What can I do in those locations? And that's what's going to define if I buy a, flight, hotel, a vacation rental, et cetera, in those destinations. So what I would say is we wanted to give back to them because they are so important to their communities. They were struggling. They weren't part of the initial funding that came out from the government. So they were having even more limited time and treasure and resources and team members. And so we wanted to do whatever we could to help them. The result, we have closer partnerships, right? They know we're here. We're not just trying to make a buck. We really are trying to travel the world better. And that's what we're going to continue to do. And so I think that's the biggest impact that we've had. We've also had, on the hotel side, we had a lot of interaction with products that maybe they hadn't used before because we were giving them complimentary. And that's helped them rebound and drive bookings, much quicker, I think, coming out of into the recovery.
That's great. And it seems like you guys both deserve and need to play a key role in this recovery. So it's refreshing to see that. Now, with regards to the consumer, we're hopefully coming out of this pandemic. It feels as though consumer behavior has changed massively, whether that's the way they spend their money, the way they browse the internet, and everything in between. For travel marketers, they probably had models and paradigms before. Are they starting at square one again, or is everything kind of tangential to where it was before? Or how are you looking at the notion of knowing your consumer these days?
Yeah, it's a great question. What I would say is everything you knew before, remember it, and then go figure out what it means now, right? So there's definitely like tweaking the algorithm. Look at real-time data as much as possible, right? Because what we saw is announcements out of specific countries at any given time totally changes the shopping and researching. Our site traffic after a announcement can go through the roof in those points of sale, right? And it's, how do you be first and foremost in front of that and ready to take advantage of that when you don't really know when it's going to happen, right? And that's where I think it's be live on some of these platforms, understand what it is, be able to ramp up and down as things are changing. One of the things that we've done is provide a lot more flexibility of moving campaigns around as the world has changed, but work with people who have that real-time data to be able to tell you the trends and can action it, essentially immediately as we think about ramping up and down.
I gotcha. And as those changes have occurred, how do you think about content alignment against all these changes? Is that still, the old test and learn, or how is that working?
Well, it's interesting. And I say that in that, so we have gone through kind of a major brand refresh, right? You've seen likely the brand Expedia campaign that we relaunched. We're really excited about the results of that, live with the Oscars and everything else that we've done. We've also taken a look at what are the brand, value propositions across our portfolio. And we are actually leaning into less real-time tweaks and more genuinely going back to the heart of these brands, right? And finding that tone that resonates with the brand, that's resonating with the right consumers. Through that, we're doing a lot of creative testing, both on the ads on our platform and ads off of our platform and everything that we're doing. I think it's just as we've all had this pandemic, it's that time to be more genuine and go back to your roots. And I think that's what we're doing as a brand in our messaging as well.
Gotcha. That sounds very reasonable, and exciting too,
That's great
frankly.
because usually I don't sound that reasonable again.
Well, that's okay, Wendy, or Wendy, okay. Now, when I wrote this question, um, I, well, my thinking has evolved since I wrote this question, but when it comes to the marketing funnel, I guess when I wrote this, I was thinking about whether or not the marketing funnel even exists, and is it now just a spiral? But you know, maybe a shame spiral for some of us, hopefully not. But how are you thinking about the disruption, and the funnel? Is it 3, 4 funnels like it was before? Or is it broken up into 25 different micro funnels? How are you thinking about it?
Yeah. I have two favorite analogies about, the death of the funnel. The spiral, I hadn't heard so much. That scares me a little bit, but the the two that I love the most, my parents are actually beekeepers. That's their main trade and has been. And so it's the
Wow.
honeybee, right? It's, as you think about the pollinators and they go around an orchard and they go around and do these things. Um, that's the shopper today, right? When you have 40 tabs over 3 windows open and you're doing all these different things and our multitasking brains as we've been sitting in front of these, machines for the last year. And I think of it more as a bumblebee, or the other, we have a great partner in Canada who describes it as an atom, right? And as things are all moving around and as we are moving around in our shopping, uh, I think it's critically important that you're in as many places as you can be in that, right? So working with the right partners who can
Right.
get you as close to the purchase as possible, but also is getting you in that, you know, top of mind as a consumer so they know as they're going throughout this that your name exists and that your brand exists and that what you're doing exists. So I and it depends on the product too, right? The way that people shop for travel, for the most part, things have changed because we see more reliance on the car. But you buy your flight, then you buy your hotel or your vacation rental, right? Some of that's shifting. But like when we think about destinations, like where you have to be top of mind at the very beginning, because everything kind of goes on from there. So
Right.
so in some ways, there's still an element of this and then these things, but then generally you're still competing against this, attention span of a gnat that we humans now have.
Yeah, and as much as I'm tempted to continue with the honeybee analogy, I'll spare you and your parents and the audience. Now, when it comes, I'm sorry.
I was just laughing. We'll have a whole ag 101 later.
Yes, that's another brand innovator conference. The when it comes to intent signals, and this is where I'm trying to use the B and I won't. I'm sure you had some very reliable intent signals in the past. Have they changed and shifted, or or are they still fairly static? How are you and your partners thinking about that?
It's a great question. And one of the things that we often, and I know that you have this challenge as well, is we have so much data, right? You know, petabytes or whatever that I get the words wrong, but however many
Right.
bytes of this. But the what do you use? I go back to real time as much as possible, right? And when we think about our travelers, right, we can catch them off site. But when someone's shopping for travel on our platform, we know exactly what they're doing. We know what they're thinking. Now, they may be looking at Niagara Falls and Cancun at the same time, and those are very different. but we know kind of their date range. We know when you need to fill rooms. We know all of those different points about these people, and we can be accretive to their travel journey as we bring in the messages and sometimes discounts and other things as we bring it and present it. So for me, it's all about the real-time element of getting in front of people while they're thinking about your category, while they're thinking about doing and buying what you have. That to me is the holy grail. That's the gold that we can provide, and they're the strongest intent signals you'll ever get.
Gotcha. And how much, does education play a part in this as we have various and new consumer concerns when it comes to travel?
Yeah, it's something that we have been doing intercept studies with shoppers on our site. I mean, we have throughout this pandemic, our traffic may be down, the number of shoppers we may have been down during the heart of the pandemic, but people were still coming to shop for travel, right? There were still people out there throughout that whole time. And so when we think about the signals that we're getting and how we're moving them along, it's critically important. Just as we're watching that, when we were doing the intercepts, we were trying to really understand what was on their mind. And we found, this is the most recent from our travel recovery and trend report, is 4 in 5 travelers are expected, they're going to make accommodation decisions based on implemented pandemic measures. Cleanliness,
Wow.
right?
8%.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what we found is, don't use masks in your ads. People don't want to see that. Don't use, hand sanitizer. It's not a real big converter, but use the wide open spaces, use the clean, that cleanliness feel, and talk about what you're doing. That's critically important.
Gotcha. And we're getting, it really feels like, and I, hope that I'm right, we're right, that it feels like we're coming out of the morass of 2020. But can you share a positive outcome or opportunity you've seen emerge from all the uncertainties from 2020?
I think generally it's the appreciation of travel. It's
Mm,
something that we took so for granted, and the people around us, right? The first vacations are happening not where are you going, it's who are you going to see or who are you going with. Like the centering of people centric travel, and then you get to choose these amazing locations. And then now we're seeing a lot of those first trips have happened. I don't know if you've been on an airplane lately, but I haven't been on an undersold flight. I've been on oversold flights every single plane I've been on. And so those trips are happening, and now they're going, where are we going next? All right, we're catching up with people. And so I think it's just that evolution of the appreciation, and that pent up demand is so big.
yes, yes, it feels that way. And that kind of blends into the question of, if you're a travel marketer and you're thinking about, should I take a wait and see and focus my 2021 budget towards the back half of the year, or should I be jumping in with both feet now to try to snare and capture as much of that demand now as opposed to waiting?
I think that the answer to that is it depends. Get with people who have the data to help you make those decisions. Like that's what we've been talking about with a lot of our partners over, the last year. And we just even we knew there was nothing to be bought, but we were meeting to say, okay, this is what we're seeing. What are you seeing? Okay, let's talk about what does this mean for your plans? What does this mean for your goals? And we've been meeting with people very regularly to continue to share that updated information. Some markets are sold out already for the summer. So if
Wow.
you haven't booked
Right.
your vacations for the summer, I would highly encourage you to go book them, because prices are going up, just as our CEO warned would happen. But some are already sold out. So what are you going to do to achieve your goals? We think seasonality is going to look different than it has in the past, because people are going to be willing to travel more in the second half of the year in times and then maybe they wouldn't have traveled. Maybe they were priced out or too late on the summer destinations they wanted to go to. Maybe they're going to add those into the second half. So get with people, get the data, if you're not having the conversation, start having them with your partners, whether it be us or anyone. Like, just
Mm,
get the data and get going, because the time is real. The roaring 20s of travel are here.
gotcha. We're almost at time, and I have to go book my summer vacation immediately. But one last question for you. You you said you went on a vacation already. I wanted to ask you, what will your first non-business trip be post quarantine, and how did it feel? But you've already done it. Where did you go, and was it awesome, or tell us?
Well, I did travel during the quarantine, I will say, or not the quarantine, the pandemic. My
Hmm.
my husband is an airline pilot, as you can see by the planes behind me. So
Oh yes.
he was out in it the whole time. So we kind of felt like we could go out and be in it too. Our first trip was to northern Wisconsin to see my sister and her family. That was very much the who. We hadn't seen them and we wanted to
Sure.
see them, and so we went for Halloween. That was amazing. And then this last week, I went with two dear friends to Palm Springs. And I would like to say I flew in and I flopped, but I had a little bit of work to do. But just the food, the sun, and it was amazing talking to business owners there and seeing the rebound that they've truly had in Q1, and that they're up above 2019 numbers for Q1 is an awesome thing to see, and it felt fantastic.
That's great. That's great. And where to this summer?
I actually have like 7 tabs open right now of different destinations. My kids just want to be somewhere where it's warm and where there's pools. And so I'm trying to pick. I don't want to throw those out there because I might get some emails from people I don't have in my consideration set yet, or trying to convince me. But I look forward to the marketing that's going to convince me to pick one.
Gotcha. I remember when my kids were little, we took them to Puerto Rico, rainforest, bioluminescence, all this cool stuff. I pulled them on the way home and said, "What was your favorite part?" And they said, "The pool." We could have gone to the Sheraton in Weehawken, and saved a lot of money. But